Hey everyone, it's Dr. Andy Armstrong from Head to Toe Spine and Sports Therapy. This is our first Facebook Live event, as you may have noticed by our rough beginning. I am super excited to have Dr. Rebecca Hoppins here from Seattle Naturopathic Clinic, the master of sugar, stress, and hormones. And we're just going to have a super great discussion today about some of the issues we're all dealing with, really. Sleep is such a big one, weight gain is such a big one, just general energy and well-being during the day. So I have just had the pleasure of working with Dr. Becky Hoppins. I like to call her Becky, but for off and on for years on many patients, she's solved some amazingly difficult cases with me and for me. So I've worked with her long enough to know that she really loves fat. So
yes,
Dr. Hoppins, tell me about fat.
Okay, fat gets a bad rap. So fat is something that we have been told to not eat for a long time. So in the 70s and 80s, don't eat trans-saturated fatty acids because they're toxic and they don't exist in nature, became to eliminate fat from the diet. And what that has allowed is this influx of sugar and sugar and salts into the diet, and which has raised heart attack and diabetes risk. So we are now in an epidemic of diet caused diabetes. So what fat does in the stomach is it slows down how quickly all the contents of a meal leaves. So it slows it down. There are fat receptors, and that keeps the amount of food from leaving the stomach very quickly. If you put a whole bunch of fat into the intestines, you'll diarrhea it out. So, sorry, can I use those words here? Yeah. So there's a mechanism that prevents the stomach from emptying us quickly. So when food leaves the stomach quickly, in general, carbohydrates in particular, your blood sugar will go up quickly, particularly if it's carbs. That makes insulin go up fast. And insulin takes glucose from the bloodstream and puts it into the cells. Well, if you've got a lot of carbs and a lot of insulin, the glucose is going to be gone very quickly, but insulin keeps working, and so it drives blood sugar down, and then you get a hypoglycemic episode, which most people will feel as the hangries, the shakies, they feel spacey. Another big one is hot flashes, and if this kind of thing is happening at night, we get into things like interrupted sleep, insomnia, night sweats. Some people get heart palpitations, brain chatter. So it's one of the first things dietarily that I have people do when they come in with these complaints of not being able to think properly, not having enough energy, hot flashes, night sweats. And this isn't just menopausal women. This is people, men and women, children, teenagers, young adults, all ages. It's not just for 50-year-old women. So
yeah, I think that's so much information, really all in one great pile. So I'd love to break it down a little bit, because this is how, like, your brain functions like this, and you turn pathways upside down, and you can just dialogue everything. And for most of us commoners, we're just like, what, okay, so fat, So just to summarize, so it slows down basically our food uptake, and it slows down insulin response. Is that a right
Exactly,
okay.
Exactly. And one thing I should say about insulin is it's a hormone. And everybody seems to understand that their issues are a hormonal problem, but they're thinking about the wrong hormones. They think it's estrogen or progesterone or testosterone, when really what they're feeling is the action of insulin and adrenaline.
Okay, this is huge. So I know where she's going with this, so I'm gonna slow it down just a little bit, because I've been through all these issues myself. Like, I think many people have been. So backtracking a little bit. So I've had a long day at work. Okay, so I go home and I have a gigantic glass of red wine.
Oh, sounds
and
like
then
fun.
and then I know it's great, right? And then magically at 3 a.m. I'm wide awake. In fact, I wake up and I wake up, my heart is racing, and I'm sweating, and I'm thinking, am I in menopause, or what's going on here? Like, this is horrible. Mm-hmm. And what's going on there? Break it down for me.
Okay, there's a number of things. Sometimes it's alcohol specific that will occur to in people just with red wine, maybe not with white or different types of alcohol. From a hormonal perspective, one major aspect is alcohol is a carbohydrate ultimately. So if you're eating it by itself or consuming it by itself, your blood sugar is going to go up rapidly. because alcohol goes straight through the stomach lining. I mean, you don't even have to wait for it to get into the intestines to have its effect. So water, drugs, alcohol, or certain drugs, some things will do that. Juice, those are the things that will go in plain, pure sugar will go directly into the bloodstream from the stomach. The other thing that alcohol will do is it inhibits gluconeogenesis, which is the ability of the liver to release glucose. So your blood sugar goes up, your insulin goes up, blood sugar goes down, and there's really no way for the liver to recover that. And that's what's happening at night when there's no stimulus. Now, you're doing this at 7 p.m. at night. You haven't eaten since maybe 1, 2, or 3 for a snack. Cortisol levels are low, blood sugar levels are low. You drive the blood sugar up, insulin comes up, blood sugar crashes, and then you eat. You have dinner, which means your insulin is going to keep going up again. Even if you're eating, perfect protein, vegetables, fats. But insulin has gone up even higher to start to get the glucose that you are consuming into the cells. But your glucose is going to fall in the night, and it's going to go below a particular threshold. And that creates that hypoglycemic episode. And during that time, the liver can't respond because alcohol is preventing the liver from releasing glucose because the body will metabolize the alcohol first. So you get into this hypoglycemic episode, it stresses the brain says, hey, we need to fix this right away. So we get these adrenaline rushes, and that's where the vasodilation, that causes the heat, the awareness, the heart pounding. Some people get full-on panic attacks. So
if I were to come home at 4 o'clock and just have like a loaf of bread,
same thing,
right? Okay,
it's essentially the same thing. Yeah.
So it's not just the alcohol.
No,
it's really just that carbohydrate load. So how do I not get that effect of just eating a carbohydrate? How do I modulate that?
Okay, eat fat first. It's my favorite thing to say. Rather than don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. Eat a fat. Preferably something that is spreadable. Because you think about the stomach lining, there's all those receptors on there. You want to activate the receptors and keep your calories lower. You want to do something that's kind of liquid or spreadable. So an easy one there is things like guacamole, avocado. I know people who will take their glug of fish oil or flax oil or eat coconut oil. It could be anything like that. Even hummus would work, but there has to be a fair amount of fat in there. Nut butters work for my patients who aren't dairy sensitive, and there's not very many of those. Cheese would be something. This is where charcuterie, yes, there can be issues with that for some people because it's either fermented or cured, and that's problematic for other people. But eating protein or fat before you consume any carbohydrate or any alcohol will blunt that effect of insulin skyrocketing, because both protein and fat slow stomach emptying. They take time to digest, so we can use that physiological mechanism to our benefit so that we don't get these blood sugars up and down that's being driven all over the place by insulin and adrenaline.
Okay, so a handful of nuts doesn't do it because you can't break it down and pulverize it and coat that stomach lining.
You can if you do that earlier in the afternoon.
Okay.
So let's say you're on your way home, you have a handful of nuts. That is going to work by the time you get home and start cooking and chopping, and you have that glass of wine before dinner. But it has to be significantly before, not immediately before. But if it was a nut butter, guacamole, that kind of thing, right away. It just has to hit your stomach, and it's going to activate those receptors right away. And then, all right, open the bottle, knock them back.
So I guess what I'm wondering too, like I remember you saying in the past that insulin, because we know insulin's supposed to go up when we have a carbohydrate. I mean, that's how it all works.
Right.
So I remember you saying that insulin has a half-life. And so it's actually it stays elevated.
Yes.
Like so in the nighttime event when we're waking up at 3 in the morning.
Yes.
So insulin's staying elevated, but I remember you saying that our blood sugar crashes through that, and then we get this sort of adrenaline spike. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. So insulin's half-life is about 2 hours. So if you have a carbohydrate load, about 8 to 10 hours later, so insulin will start to go up after you've had that carbohydrate, whatever it is, whether it's juice or a muffin or whatever. So if you don't eat for 8 to 10 hours, your insulin is going to go like this. But the whole time that it's working, your blood sugar is going to be going down. The only things that would prevent that are increased stress, things that make your cortisol or adrenaline go up, because they all make your blood sugar go up. So that's probably a different topic for a different day. That's why people who go really hard can go for 8 to 10 hours without eating and they feel okay. But how many weeks or months or years can you do that before the mechanism breaks down? So different topic for a different day.
But maybe a little tidbit of it, because I think that we haven't really talked about like cortisol. I don't know if we're ready to go there yet. With maybe it's too much of a leap at this stage. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, when we're talking about people who go hard, like in my mind, I think of of the endurance athlete or so. That's always really outputting a lot of fatigue on their body. And then people who are just always stressed out. And then from a weight perspective, from a weight loss, weight gain perspective, I think about the people who are always having that little bit of a spare tire around their middle, and they're working out like crazy. They're working out 5-6 days a week. They're really putting the time in, but they're always carrying that extra weight. I know we're jumping the topics a little bit,
Fine. Yeah.
but we can leap back again. But I just, that's a big one that always like bugs me, and I think of it as a blood sugar belly. But again, I say it without having the knowledge that you do. So can you help us understand that just a little bit?
That, it really is the $1 million question.
Okay.
If we could always get rid of that spare tire, how? I think most of it is the overtraining part of it. If cortisol levels are too high, blood sugar levels are going to go too high, and we deal with that excess blood sugar by turning it into triglycerides, blood fats, and that goes into the fat cells. And it's pretty well established that spare tire kind of a thing around the waist is from elevated cortisol. And I have to wonder if it's right at the peak of elevated cortisol, or as we start to come getting down into more adrenal fatigue as opposed to chronic adrenal stress where cortisol is high. Because cortisol breaks down all body tissues with the exception of fat. So people start to lose lean muscle mass, the gut lining. Cortisol is catabolic. It breaks down everything. So
it keeps us alive, yet it's catabolic. It's at higher levels.
Well, yes.
Oh,
so
okay.
Exactly. It would be probably the first hormone deficiency we would die from if it was gone. So
wow.
Yeah. So just a quick thing about cortisol is it has a circadian rhythm where it starts to rise and it peaks around 10 in the morning and it goes down as the day goes on. And our blood sugar rises with that, and it's maintained somewhat by the amounts of cortisol that's there. So people who have low cortisol levels tend to not wake up with good energy, and that can also occur at night. If it's really low, it can't keep your blood sugar levels up. Which brings us back to the insulin issue. If you have high insulin and low cortisol, you're going to be going through these big blood sugar highs and lows, and it is a roller coaster. So that's where you would think hot flashes, panic attacks, particularly when you're finally relaxed. A lot of that can be controlled with diet. Basic changes in diet of the macronutrients, fat, protein, and carbohydrate balance. And we have to eat a lot more fat than we think. And some diets are 75-80% fat, and not everybody can do that, but those are possibilities. I think it's closer to 40-50% of calories should be from good, primarily plant-based fats like nuts, seeds, avocados, the good oils.
That's a lot more than we would conventionally think, though. We always, I think fat, as you said in the beginning, fat's got such a bad rap, and I know that now, we're not going to get into the diet discussion today because it's such a big one, but it's really all over the place with whether it's, the ketogenic, whether it's paleo, whether it's,
zone diet, Mediterranean diet.
Beach, so we'll have to come back and really have that discussion again on how we should eat, like what is the combination. But just a personal story, when we like to say we met on Craigslist, which maybe sounds a little creepy, but we did. Dr. Hoffman's rented some office space for me when we first met, and I was a bit of a hot mess then, admittedly, and I covered it up well, but I was feeling kind of cruddy in the morning, and then I just wasn't great energy in the morning, and then in the afternoon I was like, woo, like bring it on, like just bouncing off the walls, and she's kind of watching me fly around and mixing up potions for me in the back office. Anyways, one day she tinctures. Yeah, yes. It was a lot of fun. Bee shots, tinctures. But one day she got me tested, and it was really interesting because she was talking about the cortisol and the circadian rhythm. When you wake up in the morning, you should have great energy, and then as your day goes on, it kind of tapers down, so you can sleep at night. and I'm roughing this out because it's not my areas of expertise, but so she mapped mine out. We did this lab test, and I had nothing in the morning.
Yep.
Like my cortisol was flat as a pancake, and then around 3, like it spiked through the roof. And then believe it or not, hey, guess what? I wasn't sleeping. So because it was all messed up. So we did a combination of things, but we did adrenal support for me. I mean, I'm a working mom, like many people are, and busy and doing tons of stuff, and so she gave me adrenal support in the morning, so kind of helping me to produce more cortisol.
Lift the cortisol.
Because adrenals, I mean, we talk about adrenals, but not everyone even knows what those are.
Right, yeah. So when we're talking about adrenal function, we're talking about we want this cortisol to go like this. And she had more of this flipped cortisol curve where it was low in the morning, so it's hard to wake up, so low blood sugar in the morning. I don't recall if you were skipping breakfast or not, but it would go up in the afternoon. So there's this question of what caused it to be elevated in the afternoon. Was it food? Was it the workload or whatever? But as that cortisol level goes up, and this is after lunch, so she's eaten, her insulin levels have gone up, and then that's jumped up by the cortisol. Her insulin levels would have gone even higher independently of the food. So that would crash her blood sugar at night, so she's waking up or couldn't sleep at all during the night. So this is a story I hear all the time.
Yeah.
And that particular test is what we call an adrenal stress index, where we do 4 salivary samples throughout the day, on waking, at noon, late afternoon, and at bedtime, and we can kind of map that curve. Does it go like this, like it's supposed to, or is it doing this, or here, or I see lots of flat lines. I've gotten to the point where I can usually identify what those are even without the testing, which is nice because it saves a little bit of time, a little bit of money, and but to find a high cortisol in the afternoon can be difficult to figure out. So that was a good call on our part. But we were able to get her shifted, and when she gets stressed out, it shifts over again, and then we reapply the adrenal plan.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's really, it's just, what I love really about some of your work is that it's relatively simple. It's really complex. It's really complex, but it's relatively simple in how you can affect it just with diet. Even if we took supplements out of the picture, like what you have always said to me, and I've always since passed on to my patients, is fat first.
Eat fat first.
Eat fat first. So now getting out of bed, take your what would be thyroid medication first, I guess. But then having I usually have avocado. Yep. And or coconut milk, and or those people who are
one or both.
Yeah, something like that to help like right away set your blood sugar up for success during the day rather than crash, right?
Setting it up for success. It's the first easiest thing to do, and it's a spoonful of something, a big one, on the way out the door. Because I assume nobody has time to do these things. And if you want to eat a carbohydrate, fruit, or something gluten-free after that, fine, no problems with that. But setting up for success on a daily basis every morning, it takes 10 seconds.
And it makes such a huge difference. So for those of you who can't sleep, which many of us can't sleep. I mean, it gets harder and harder, especially, if you are, nearing that perimenopause and menopausal phase, and it seems to get even more difficult. And you have to be more careful with your blood sugar. But I think it's guys and gals alike. I mean,
it is.
Plenty of people are having that waking at early 2, 3, 4 in the morning, or unable to go to sleep at night. In my case, because I had, such high cortisol levels at night still. So, so the basic message I think here is having some healthy fat, obviously, in the morning, and then when you are eating a carbohydrate, making sure to pair it with fat and protein in a hierarchy. I mean, we're talking about maybe 30% fat, 20% protein, maybe 50% carbs, or maybe even a little bit of a different balance.
I would say closer to 30-40 each on the fat or protein, and more like 20 to 30% on carbs. It really, I think of vegetables and starchy vegetables as being the carbs. We don't have much need for grain-based stuff because we have enough calories. Grain is really for storage over long periods of time when we don't have these other things available to us. So, yeah, diet, fat, proteins, vegetables, some fruit, limit the grain, and this is across the board for most people.
I will tell you that Dr. Hoppins doesn't like gluten.
Wheat.
Yeah, she does, and for really good reason. And that's again, I think another whole discussion that we need to have about it because of its impact on our health overall. It's been a tough one, but back to fat and cortisol. So I guess maybe in summary, so we're eating this balanced meal during the day. You're feeling your energy levels change. You're feeling your cortisol levels kind of maybe balance out. And then at night, you're being careful with maybe your kind of 4 o'clock onwards uptake of carbohydrate.
Yes, after school snack. You got to be
Your
careful with the
after school
school
snack, right? Your after school snack, because then you could be potentially setting, even though it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you could be setting yourself up for this elevated insulin going into the evening, and then pumping it up maybe even more with dinner, and then not being able to really bring it back down.
You can't. Once it's shot up, it's going to have the effect of dropping glucose. So you just have to ride it out. If you screw it up that day, you just reset it the next day. And we all do it. You know, you have a handful of crackers, and it's like, oh, what have I done? You pair that with wine, or the wrong kind of wine. Yeah, you're going to wake up in the night. Yeah. Or feel hot, soak the sheets, that kind of thing.
So, I mean, really how straightforward is that? That is like basically just a subtle diet change, and you're going to be resting better, feeling better, more energy during the day, sleeping better. And that's without taking any supplements or doing anything else. And it's just a great, easy message. Any other kind of key sort of simple tricks you could share with us on this whole? And the one other thing I think we just need to open up a little bit before we finish our talk today is, you know, everyone's heard like bioidentical hormones. I mean, I've come to you and said, I think it's time for bioidentical hormones, and you're like, no. And so I mean, I think it's really. Most people don't think of them as one whole parcel, and I think you always say that cortisol is kind of the mother and the mommy and the daddy of them all, and that unless you've balanced blood sugar and made that effect on cortisol, you can't even start affecting your estrogens and progesterones. And I know this is a big topic, but maybe glaze over it for me.
Glaze over it. Like I alluded to earlier, the effects of hormone imbalances, when people come in and say, I think I have a hormonal imbalance, they're thinking of estrogen, but what they're feeling is the effects of insulin and adrenaline and whatever cortisol is doing underneath those. But those are kind of the bottom line. This is what you're feeling. How do we work backwards from those things to get you feeling better while we fix everything else? Because the hormonal imbalances can be from stressors, inflammation, etc. And the truth is, estrogen doesn't work very well unless everything else is taken care of. So it's not off the table by any means, and there's some things that only estrogen can work on, but it's a lot less than what most people think. So, yes, we should talk about estrogen and progesterone and what in particular they do and how it directly affects adrenal function in menopause. It's a really good and important topic, and it explains menopause and the symptoms of it pretty clearly.
Okay, I'm going to tune in for that one. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for watching this, and I'd love to hear from you in regards to what you'd like to hear next from us. I mean, I think we have an opportunity to talk again, and we've opened up a few things, diet being one of them, kind of that right diet, and then getting more into the hormone discussion. I think we can talk a lot more about that. So, thanks very much, and have a great rest of your day.